Good morning, everyone, and welcome to IGTV. This is our monthly update with Access Communications Training Academy, and we have with us today John Phelps. And John, what's the topic you're going to be covering today?
I'm going to talk about local storage on the camera's edge, on the network edge. We're making a lot of use with it with our software, and we're seeing a lot of our competitors doing the same. So it's
Oh,
definitely a coming topic. So,
take it away, John.
all right, sure. As you know, IP cameras, they're intelligent devices. They're mini computers, nodes on a network, and with that in mind, they can support local storage, SD cards, SDHC cards, or even now coming out shortly from our product line are going to be micro SD card slots, so that we'll have the ability to record right on the edge of the network. One of the uses of that we're developing and pushing quite a bit is what we call failover recording, where the camera configured to record to a standard VMS platform, when it senses that the network has lost connection to that VMS server, the camera will begin recording with the same parameters to its local storage device so that you don't lose any recordings. It's just going to simply record locally, and then once it reestablishes connection and communication to that VMS server, there'll be a secondary stream that's generated from the camera, and that missing time frame of recording gets dumped to the VMS software, so you don't have any lost recordings. That's available in our current Access Camera Station platform 3.41, and many of our partner companies, VMS partners, ONSSI, Milestone, Salient, Genetec, they're all supporting that as well with the failover recording capability. So it gives a lot of functionality, a lot of usefulness to the cameras. Even a product that you will see from us after the summer, most likely, is going to exploit that local recording as well, where we're going to have cameras that you can configure with a software to record only to that local storage device, and they become standalone VMS systems all by themselves. So you don't even need a server. You simply need a network with a PoE switch to power the camera, and then they will do everything themselves internally with the local storage in mind. So we can record H.264 video streams. Support for up to 32 gig cards is what's on the market now, but up to 64 gig cards are supported in the hardware. And with H.264 at moderate frame rates, you could conceivably get several weeks to a month of recording, depending on how you set the camera to record, whether it be event driven only or 1 frame a second, moderate resolution, something like that. You could get a long time in 32 gigs of hard drive memory. So.
Yeah, it makes it very interesting, John, especially when you have the whole notion of being able to have local storage, right? These S,
Absolutely.
these SD cards. Now, are they being managed manually, or is there a remote capability to manage those SD cards?
The capability in the camera's GUI allows for remote capability for management. You can go in and actually download recordings directly from the card via the network, so you don't have to physically relocate the SD card, so it can remain in the camera. So you have that capability. It will also, as any kind of a drive device, maintain itself as far as it will purge itself after a certain time period, after a certain, amount of storage has been reached, or things like that. So first in, first out type of recordings. There is a finite number of write cycles on SD. I believe they're looking at somewhere in the 10,000 range
O-
for write
o-
cycles.
Only 10,000.
Yeah, only 10,000. So I think we can probably get a few years, out of an SD card. So yeah, it's people are saying, oh no, you don't want to use SD because of that. But I think a 10,000 write cycle lifespan, if you're looking at maybe a couple of times a week, you may be looking at a few years. to say the least.
Yeah, it's not bad, especially as the price of storage comes down in the marketplace today.
Absolutely.
And the price of SD cards, the volumes just go up and up and up and up.
Absolutely.
I could foresee in 2 years, I could foresee, without a doubt, forget about 64 gig. They're just going to keep on going up and up
Absolutely.
and up and up.
I believe the next standard that they're looking at is SDXC, which is the extreme or expanded capacity, and I've heard mention of up to 1 or 2 terabyte
Wow.
in that range. And at that point, you're looking at that's essentially a NAS drive inside a camera. So it opens up infinite possibilities as far as storage. You wouldn't even need a server to store on. You would simply use the cameras. And with solid state drives, you could conceivably see SSDs going into the cameras at some point for more capacity, maybe not for actual storage, but perhaps for the use of the operating system in the camera, or to load additional applications for analytics and things like that, where you may have several hundred gigabytes of available RAM for that type of an environment as well, and then couple that with many hundreds of gigabytes of storage. You're looking at self-contained NVRs on the edge, basically an NVR with a lens on the front of it at that point.
Yeah, it's really taking these cameras and almost making them macro computers. I was going to get into one other area, and I don't know if you're prepared for this, and if you're not, pardon
I
me.
sure give it a shot.
Well, give it a shot. But can you explain to me, because maybe this is just a lack of knowledge on my own point with this. We have a regular SD card, right? And then you
Hmm.
have a macro or micro SD
A
card.
micro SD, yeah.
All right, and with that micro SD, what is that? Is just a high def card, or
Well,
is it
it's
greater
it's a it's a
capacity?
smaller form factor. It's about a half the size essentially of a standard SD card, which is, let's say, it's roughly a 1 inch square by maybe 16th of an inch thick,
Right.
an SD card. Micro SD is about the same thickness, maybe a little thinner, maybe a 32nd of an inch, but it's only about a half inch wide by a half inch long. So it's realistically about half the size form factor wise. So that'll allow us, or other vendors as well, to put that into smaller devices. Obviously, cell phones, for instance, you don't necessarily want to use up the real estate to put a standard SD card in there, so micro SDs are going in those. Small cameras like our M10, M11 series cameras, um, we could put a micro SD card slot in those and get local storage on those, and the form factor wouldn't change drastically the form of that camera. We wouldn't have to make it larger because of a larger drive bay, so to speak. So um, HD, or the capacity is not so much
The
the
issue.
drive itself. Yeah, it's just the form factor itself, the actual size of the drive bay, and then the drive hardware itself. Uh,
I'm kind of getting into this a little bit, John, because it's kind of interesting in the criminal justice world. All right, we used to have these things where you'd have to give presentations, present
mhm.
your case to the local district attorney, and then the district attorney finally champions that case in court. And by the time you get through all this, you're talking about volumes of material and boxes and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
We have taken that form factor, right, from boxes and crates and shelves on space, into something which could basically fit in the palm of your hand. And if you had
Absolutely.
and if you had the capacity to hook your PDA up to a projector, which you can do these days, or you can just
Right.
take the SD card or micro SD card and plug it directly into a projector these days, you've taken that form factor of cases and crates and everything else and actually divided it down to something that can be held in the palm of your hand. Absolutely
Oh,
amazing where
absolutely.
we've gone with all of this.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you'll see that usefulness as well because of that. All records nowadays are digitally stored for longevity, and as well as just as you said, storage alone. You take in crates and crates of material, and now you can hold several cases worth of those crates in the palm of your hand, whereas before it may fill a 10 by 10 room in the basement of a courthouse somewhere. I'm sure the archives where they store physical evidence can be just monstrously large, and now we're able to do it on a couple of SD cards with the same amount of information.
Yeah. Now, how do you preserve the integrity of that? Because that would be the next issue that would come up in a criminal case. How do we
Right.
know the SD card or the micro SD card has
The
not been tampered with?
when we export video from them, or via a software like an Axis Camera Station or somebody else's, you can do what's called digital watermarking, where you can actually stamp the video that it came from one device, went to the next, and never left in between those two devices. And then there's certainly just a simple, excuse me very much, a simple chain of custody where the SD card was physically removed by this one person and held in his specific environment, or locked up in an evidence vault or something like that.
Right.
So you still have both ways you have to protect the security or the integrity. But certainly digital watermarking is one way to do it. The ability or inability, I guess, of being able to just go into those recordings and manipulate them, because they're not so much proprietary, but they're in a file format that only a certain application can utilize, also adds to that integrity, because now you need a specific application to get into it and start manipulating it. You can't just open it up with Windows Media Player and start editing,
Yeah,
and remove the bad guy.
I'm
So
afraid a defense attorney would rip us apart for that one. It's kind of called security through obscurity, right? It's not widely
yeah,
available, so people can't get it. Because we all know today all too well that there's some very very clever minds in the industry. I know the Access website and academy. You very verbose. You've got a lot of information up there. Is there anything up there on that digital watermarking that you know? And again, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
no, no, I certainly can look and see, and if I can find links, I will certainly send them to you. I don't know off the top of my hand if there are any white papers on that. We must have some somewhere, and certainly I can find them for you.
All right.
That is definitely one way. Integrity can be preserved via the software, is the digital watermarking. Uh, Certainly I'll see if I can find links for that to explain that technology a little bit better.
Excellent, John. I'm just going to end our recording. Got a little long on that one.